When I'm looking for a new pet snake, the first thing I'm going to ask is, how does it interact with people holding it? How is its personality? And today, we're going over the top 5 most personable snakes. My name's Adam, this is Lucifer, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. I just kind of realized how silly it is, like I'm holding a snake called Lucifer, talking about personable snakes. But anyway, meet my new, well, we're gonna get to it. She's number 5. Basically, the way that I'm putting the list together is snakes that don't mind being held. They'll tolerate it well enough that it almost seems like they enjoy it, even though they probably don't. They're not gonna be striky or defensive. They're not gonna hide all the time. Just ones that show almost like a personality. Sure, I'm personifying snakes a little bit for the episode, but whatever. It's gonna be a fun one. Let's start off with number 5, boas. Now we could include things like sand boas or rosy boas or rubber boas, like things that are not really in this family. But what I'm talking about are Central and South American boas. So these are BIs, boa imperators, and boa constrictors, formerly known as boa constrictor imperator and boa constrictor constrictor. Regardless, I'm just talking about the snakes that you would think of if I said boa. Now, one that you might not think of when I say boa is this. This is a Hog Island boa. This is a snake that I've wanted to have forever, and I walked into my regular reptile shop and they said, "Here, look what we have. You should take this." So I did. I've actually had an enclosure set up for a small boa like this. Now, this is a baby Hog Island boa. If you want something like this, which is a locality, by the way, if you want something that stays 4 or 5 feet, sometimes a little bit smaller, Hog Island boas. And there's several types of insular dwarfism type boas. Insular dwarfism just means these boas are on an island. There's not huge prey items, so they don't get as big because they can't eat huge prey items. Regardless, if you want a bigger snake that is still a boa, that is still technically the same species or in the same family, very closely related, you can get yourself just a regular boa imperator, which this is, by the way, just a different locale. And by regular, I mean something like Franny. Now, this snake isn't even full grown. She's about 6.5 feet long, and I think it's actually a boy. It was given to me as a female, but I'm pretty sure it's a boy, because the females can get 10 plus feet. And if you get a BC, a true boa constrictor, a true red-tailed boa, they can grow up to 14 feet. Now, not all the time. It's more common that they'll top out 10 or 12 feet, and they can get even bigger than the 14, but all I'm trying to say is if you want a big boa, like big, or a tiny boa, they're available for you. And as you can see, this snake here isn't trying to bite or hiss or get away from me. Just super chill, doesn't mind being handled. Still a baby, but this is how you do it. This is how you make any species on this list personable. Handle them. Get them used to you. When I stick my hand into the cage, into the enclosure, she's in quarantine right now, which is why we're doing the video up here. Quarantine animals can't go in my regular reptile room, so that's why we're up here. She's a little bit inquisitive, very fun. I'll put her on the desk and she's, what's this? Oh, the computer's warm, I'll lay on this. Just a really cool snake, and one I'm glad that I have. And now that I have 2 different types of boas, my love for them just kind of grew. My appreciation especially, just amazing snakes. Number 4. Let's talk about North American colubrids, garter snakes. Garter snakes are something that I don't have in my personal collection for a few reasons, but mostly just the room thing. Because garter snakes are one of the greatest snakes in my opinion if you want a snake that can be held with other snakes. Because most snakes are not cohabitable, or I wouldn't recommend cohabbing most species. Cohab means cohabitate, keep more than one individual together. With garter snakes, they actually do better, some would argue, in groups. And nobody who knows what they're talking about is going to scoff at keeping most types of garter snakes together. Now, there's a bunch of different types of garter snakes, right? And even things like ribbon snakes, which are in the same, you know what I mean? So it depends which ones. If you're going to get a garter snake, do a lot of research and figure it out. But some of the very common ones that are available on the market for you to buy are very personable, right? They'll just come right up. They assume you have food, I imagine, a lot of the time. But once you tap them, get them out with a hook, whatever, they're most likely going to be handled pretty easily. Now, this is for captive bred. Wild-caught ones are probably gonna musk on you and try to get away. Every garter snake that I've ever picked up in the wild has must on me. That's just what they do. Musking just means it's like a disgusting liquid that comes from their cloaca, gets on your hands, it's sticky, and it smells like Like imagine like a fish that's been left out in the sun in July. Look at that. And this is why garter snakes are growing in popularity. Not the musk thing, the personality thing. Because they do have big personalities. They, a lot of the times, especially being diurnal, are going to be out during the day. So if you're a night owl, maybe not the best snake for you. But these animals do like light. They do like being out. They do like basking as well. Where a lot of snakes don't really exhibit this. Like a true basking, like sitting under a light to gain heat rather than gaining heat from a surface that is warm because of the sun, it's not super common in snakes, but with garter snakes, it is. So that adds to their personality in my opinion. There are other snakes like this. Corn snakes are a great example, and we talked about them last week, so they do fit on the list, but I'm not going to include them. Garter snakes are just a little bit more interesting. There's several different types, localities, and that you can choose from, different types of subspecies. So just do your research first. I just wanted to bring the species or family of species to light. So if you think they're interesting, you can do more research and maybe get one of your own. Number 3, one of my all-time favorites, Burmese pythons. Now, I'm ranking the list based on personality, not the best pet for most people. Because most people can't take care of an animal that gets to 15 or more feet. And that's what a Burmese python is. Now you can get dwarf Burms. They're not super common, but they are out there that will only get to 8 feet or maybe less. But a regular Burmese python, whether it's a regular or an albino or whatever, they come in a bunch of different morphs, not the greatest pet for most people, but their personality is magnificent. I love taking out Kratos or Lightning or Thunder or whoever and handling them. I'll get on the floor and let them crawl and kind of like slither all around and maybe get some perches out or take them outside. Like there are so many great ways to interact with a Burmese python. And as long as you are careful and you have somebody else available in the room while you're handling one, because they're big, and if they mistook you for food, which is so it probably won't happen, but just in case, have someone available because they're big and powerful snakes. They eat great, and because they're so big and don't have the fastest metabolisms, they don't need to eat all the time. So you can get away with not feeding them very often at all. We're talking appropriately sized food items. You can get away with feeding them like once a month or once every 6 weeks sometimes. Again, do your research. If you get a Burmese python, well, Adam said I don't have to feed him ever, and I don't know why mine is so skinny. Do your research. This isn't a care guide. I could yammer on and on about Burmese pythons, and I will if you put it in the comments section below that you want to see a care guide, and I'll show you how I set up mine and care for mine. Otherwise, let's move on to number 2. Number 2, ball pythons. I know it's boring. I know you knew it was coming. I know normally I try to spruce up the list with crazy stuff. And number 1 will be an animal that I've never talked about on the channel, but ball pythons can't not be on the list. They have one of the best personalities. They could easily be number 1. They're easily handled. Most of the time, they're not going to give you a problem. Most of the time, they're not defensive. Most of the time, you can just pick them up and handle them with no worries, which is why I do so many videos with Pikachu, my albino. Now I've got bananas and I've got normals and I've got all sorts. I love ball pythons and they're a great pet. There's a reason that they are probably the most popular pet snake that there is available, period. So yeah, not the most interesting, not the coolest thing in the world, but ball pythons, they have a special place in my heart. They're my second snake that I ever got. And I don't think I'll ever not have ball pythons. If I want to pick up a snake and not have to worry about, being too defensive or worrying about it, I pick up a ball python. They're easy. If a friend comes over to my house and says, I want to hold a snake, I give them Pikachu. If I go into a podcast or a video on someone else's channel, I bring a ball python. If I want to hand it to a kid, okay, you get the idea. Ball python, ball python, ball python. And as long as you can get over the not eating all the time thing, which is something that's going to happen, there's a ball python care guide right here if you want to watch it. That's just kind of the only thing that, in my opinion, would be a downside. And if you don't give them enough humidity, respiratory infections, but again, they are so easy to care for. And ball pythons are one of my favorite species of any animal. Oh yeah, not to mention all the morphs. If you want a snake that you can handle that is going to be kind of they almost like being handled, they'll sit on your lap for an entire movie, and you don't want it to look like your friends, or your other friends, or your other friends, or the other guy, like, you can have one that's totally unique to you. So many colors and patterns, you really can't beat a ball python. Okay, number 1, and a snake I don't think we've ever put on a list before, African house snakes. African house snakes are wickedly underrated. I remember seeing these on a video forever ago, and they still haven't bumped up in popularity that much, but they have a little bit. And there is captive breeding going on, which is awesome. Because for a long time, you just got normal house snakes. Now, there's a bunch of different locales and subspecies, but again, that's where doing your research in the right subspecies or locale is right for you. But now we see the captive breeding, which is almost always better, less chances of parasites, generally healthier, better tempered, right? An even tempered snake is kind of the definition of a personable snake, in my opinion. They eat really well. They are just really easy to take care of. They have python little faces, even though they're a colubrid. Just overall, a highly underrated snake, and one that almost seems to like being handled when they're handled. Anytime anyone's plopped one in my hands at a shop or a show, it's just easy. They'll just sit there and be explorative, and that's a good word, explorative. They'll be explorative, like an explorer who explores things, and just be super chill, which is what a personal snake is to me. So there you go. I added some new things, some kind of old favorites. What do you think? What is your most personable snake? Let me know in the comment section below. And a special thanks if you've hit the like or subscribe button. I really appreciate you. Helps the channel. And a special super duper special thanks to the Patreon supporters. You guys are freaking amazing. You knew about Lucifer a few weeks ago when we got her. She is absolutely splendid, and I'm so glad that I have her, and I get to share it with people on Patreon before I share it on the channel. And I still have a few extra special creatures that I haven't shown on the channel yet, but they're on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get all of that, discounts on merch, extra videos, all sorts of things, and that's it. Because I do videos twice a week, that means that I'll see you on Thursday.